Hey everyone, welcome. We will let people trickle in for the next 5 minutes. Welcome back. There's familiar faces who I love seeing every week. Also, kind reminder, please make sure your video is off. Just to make sure that we keep the video and the recording clean. Not that I don't love seeing everyone's face, but I'm gonna start in 1 minute just to give everyone time. We had a fair amount of signups on this one, so I want to make sure that we give everyone ample time. As a reminder, the recording will always be available on Maven, as well as we'll email it to you after. And cool. Let me just get all my notes ready. Charles, do you mind just keeping an eye on people, the stragglers as they come in? Also, we had some issues with people being able to see the slides last time, so if you can't see it, please flag it, and we'll make sure that we make things bigger for you guys. All right, let's dive into it. So today we have a really, really exciting session. We're going to be talking about how to master LinkedIn to be able to get your first customer, whether you're a B2B software, independent consultant, how to get your first customer or client on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become this kind of black box where everyone knows that you should be posting to get clients, but the issues of what to post and when to post and what topics to talk about and who to talk to, seems to be a recurring problem. And with the rise of AI and everyone having access to ChatGPT and Claude, we're seeing more and more people kind of lose credibility by just not approaching LinkedIn in the correct way. And so the objective for today is to go through for the next 40-ish minutes, is talk about how we can build something that you can actually start using right away. So we're going to talk about how to get that first client or that first customer in 30 days. Today's session will go through 6 sections, 6 different modules, and then we'll definitely have time for Q&A at the end. Modules 1 through 5 are the system. So talking about how we approach content, how we approach going through, figuring out what to talk about and never running out of ideas of what to say, making sure that we're targeting our specific buyer or our ICP, building out a matrix to know how to say different things and in different formats. And then, making sure that we're focusing on a lot on hooks, because hooks are so important. If you haven't captured anyone's attention, they will never listen to what you have to say. That is one of the key things that people seem to forget about LinkedIn, is it is still a social media platform. And so attention is so important to be able to capture. And that's why we want to be writing effective hooks. And then servicing different buyers, hand raisers, who are engaging with your content and opting in to saying, hey, we like what you're saying. We want to potentially buy something from you. Also, as we go through, Charles will be in the chat and collecting questions. So while I will be talking about, I'll be going through the presentation. If there's a question that is timely, I will answer it. If not, I will answer all of them at the end. So I'll make sure I get through everyone's question by the end of the session. All right, let's talk about why posting alone or just sporadically posting is never going to close deals. It's honestly just not worth doing if that's your approach currently. So there are three things that kill LinkedIn content before it even has a chance. First, you probably don't have a point of view. And if your advice is that everyone agrees with it, it will just go and disappear into the algorithm. It will never service it to your correct buyer. And maybe some of your past colleagues, your high school friends will like it, but then it will just kind of disappear. And that's where we see, 0 likes to maybe 5. The people who you actually want to see it will never actually see it. Second is the hook. The hook is so important. And if it doesn't stop someone from scrolling, then your best insights are buried in a paragraph. You will never even get the opportunity to be able to get your point across to the buyer. You're writing essentially for an audience that already has stopped reading. Then third, you have no conversion path. So a lot of individuals, maybe you master getting, a couple posts out a week. That's great. But you're posting and getting some engagement, but never going any deeper with that. You aren't collecting leads. You have no clear call to action, no next step. And so this engagement without a path, maybe is servicing and growing some of your followers, but it will never actually get you to that closed deal. This quote on the right here is something that I say a lot to our clients. And essentially that a post with 10,000 impressions and 0 pipeline conversion is really just a vanity metric and not what we're optimizing for. The number that matters is that conversion. How many conversations were we able to start from the content that we produce? So the missing loop is the framework that we follow. Makes everything else in this session make sense. So this is good context as we get into this. LinkedIn content has 4 stages. Most founders are only doing one of them. Stage 1 is you post. It reaches the people. Some of them actually know exactly who you are and who you work with. 2, they signal, they like, they save, they view your profile. All of these are intent signals, behavioral data that tells you that they're paying attention and they want more from you. Stage 3 is the trigger. So you detect that signal and you notice that pattern. So you'll be able to recognize who that individual is and the pattern that they're showing of how they want to buy that content. Stage 4 is your response. So you reach out 24 and 48 hours, not cold, right? You've now built up a warm audience. And you're no longer pitching because they already trust you and they already recognize who you are. So the whole point of this is building your content system to feed stages 2 through 4, because that's where the pipeline actually comes from. Most founders really only do stage 1 and wonder why the content never works. I put together a LinkedIn Engine Claude Code setup. This is something that you guys can download. It's a completely free resource for those of you who are a little bit more tech savvy. You can take these same files and drop them into your Claude chat or Claude Cowork setup. And in this, we'll have detailed documentation on how to discover beliefs, the content matrix, signal tracker and spreadsheet, and DM scripts for every type of signal that you see. We'll link to this again at the end, but I want to make sure that for those of you, some people have to drop off early, get access to this resource early on. So core beliefs, let's find out what you need to say or what you should be saying. So here's the thing about AI. A lot of people go to AI and they drop in their ideas and tell it to write like a LinkedIn post. And it can write a post. It can somewhat mimic your tone, and it can copy your frameworks or the frameworks of other people. But what it cannot do ever is replicate how you see the industry based on your specific experiences. And so when we think about core beliefs, it's a strong point of view or an opinion that others in your space would either strongly agree with or push back on. It's not a hot take for engagement's sake. It is a genuine position of that you've developed from doing the work that you do every day. Everyone has one of these. Everyone has multiple of these. You just might not know how to vocalize it, and you might not have it documented. And there are 3 tests for whether something is actually a belief. 1, could someone disagree with it? If everyone just nods, then it's a truism. It's not a belief you want someone to be able to pick a side on. 2, it implies what you uniquely do. So the belief points towards your methodology without pitching it, and someone reading it understands what you do differently than someone else. 3, you'd actually argue it. So not a softened version, but the thing you'd say out loud at a conference to a peer who maybe potentially push back. And I mention these things because, and I mentioned the ability to argue it one way or the other, because a lot of people play it a little bit too safe here. Actually, most people do. And that's why we end up with a lot of generic, boring content. You have strong opinions. If you are a founder building a piece of software, you have a strong opinion on why your piece of software needs to exist. And what we need to do is uncover what that is. So your beliefs are really your moat, because everything else compounds from there. And especially with AI making software costs go to zero, having a belief and having a point of view are more important than ever before. So a little exercise to do, take 60 seconds. You can do it now. Feel free to drop them in the chat. Is write down an answer to one of these 3 questions. What do you know that most people in your space get wrong? What advice do you give every single client without exception? This is where recording your sales calls or your consulting calls come important, because you can actually go through your transcripts and be like, hey, what's some of that advice that I repeat on every call? You might uncover patterns that you're not even cognitively aware of. 3rd, what would you argue about with a peer at a conference? Not, an argument for argument's sake, but a position, a stance, a perspective. You don't have to do all 3. You just need one as a starting point, but something that you're confident and proud that you would put your name on. That belief, whatever you just wrote, that's your first post. We're going to figure out how to write it specifically in Module 3, but at least we have a direction. Now, if this is still a little bit too vague for you, we can go into some examples. So let me show you what a few great beliefs actually look like. These are 3 I've seen drive real pipeline. First one, cold outreach didn't die because of bad copy. It died because you were asking before you earned it. Notice what this implies. Trust before the ask. Content earns the right to reach out. Buyers agree immediately. Sellers push back. That's the perfect belief territory. Second, a founder with 800 followers and a sharp POV will close more enterprise deals than one with 80,000 who plays it safe. Now, this one directly contradicts the metric most people optimize for. Most people look at follower count, impression growth, and it flips the whole frame. I'm not stating something that is attacking or hurting someone else, but I'm stating a point of view where, someone maybe believes that 80,000 followers is better. And it implies what I find valuable as an individual, which is getting new leads through your content. And 3rd, most founders should stop posting until they have something to disagree about. This one's a little uncomfortable, but the people it resonates with, those are the ones that are my buyers. They've been doing the same thing, posting without a position and getting nothing for it. And the common thread, each one of these takes a real position, a real perspective. Each one implies a solution, and each one would make certain people uncomfortable. And that's okay. So now that we have our beliefs, now we're able to build this into a content matrix. The nice thing about beliefs is, as a core belief, you can write about that belief in a few different ways. You can write it as a contrarian post, a curiosity post, a number and result, a confession, a direct address. You can take that belief and you can multiply it by these different formats. And so these are 6 different hook types. There are definitely more, and a lot of people take the same ideas and kind of relabel them as different things. But the idea is a different way to explain that belief or demonstrate that belief. So with a contrarian post, you challenge an obvious assumption your buyer holds. You take that opposite position and you defend it. Again, this isn't being contrarian just to be a, pot stirrer, but you're challenging this assumption that your buyer already has. Next is curiosity gap. So you create an information gap that they need to close. The next line feels necessary and they can't wait to read it. And so what this is you're posing a question that when they read, they go, I don't know about this. You've created that gap in their brain. Next would be number and result. So you lead with a specific outcome. You probably have seen this if you spend any time on LinkedIn or Twitter. But being hyper specific, instead of saying, I did a lot of outreach, I sent 400 cold DMs. The specificity of it is what stops the scroll and adds a lot more value and credibility to what you're doing. What does a lot mean, right? If I just said I did a lot of outreach, is that 10 or is that 400? Next is a story opener. So you drop someone into a scene. If you ever did a creative writing class or something like that, you can kind of tap into that side of your brain. But no setup, no backstory. But you reference a specific name, a moment, something happened, something visceral. Something that says, that starts the person in the story immediately. Next would be a confession. So you admit a failure or an uncomfortable truth. This level of vulnerability builds trust faster than almost anything else, especially in feeds full of wins and success. You want to be able to, be vulnerable and be open and talk about failures. Things that didn't go as planned. As, business owners or even just high-level employees, everyone goes through so many failures on a daily basis. And that type of confession builds a lot of trust and a lot of, the word authenticity. Direct address. So here you're calling out your exact buyer in a line. So if you're a B2B founder who ... right? You make them feel seen and they know that post is specifically for them. And what's cool is if you take these 5 beliefs, if you take the 5 beliefs that we did previously and you take these 6 hooks, all of a sudden we have 30 unique post angles before you've even tried. So building this type of framework or this type of matrix allows you to never run out of content ideas again. So let's see what this looks like in practice. 1 belief, 6 posts. So this belief is cold outreach fails because trust comes before the ask. And essentially what we're saying here is if you pitch someone cold, it's not going to work. But if you build trust before you send an outreach, right? This goes into our core belief of no one should be doing cold outbound. It should only be warm outbound. And this is how I'd approach it from these 6 different angles. So the contrarian version would be blatantly saying, stop sending cold emails. That's the hook. People are going to stop because it looks like a direct challenge to what they're already doing. If you are sending cold emails, you're going to want to know why I feel so strongly and opinionated about this. For Curiosity Gap, there are 2 types of outreach. One, books calls. Most founders use the wrong one. They have to read the next line, right? We have created this missing gap of information that if they are doing outreach, if we have spoken to them directly and they're a founder, they're going to want to know what the wrong one is. Hint and a little bit of note, people are much more likely to know what they're missing out on or what they're doing wrong versus something they can do better. It's just human psychology. Next, for number and results, I sent 400 cold DMs. Here's the one thing that actually booked the call, right? I've given a specific number and there's an implied payoff. If you want to book calls, I know from my personal experience of sending 400 cold DMs. For a story opener, I can drop you into the scene and be like, I found her I worked with closed $150,000 without a single cold message. Immediately, you're in the middle of a result before they even know what happened. And I can go on talking about that conversation with that founder that I had. It obviously works better if it's a real conversation, and if you can be more specific about that example. As a confession, I wasted 18 months on cold outreach before I understood this, right? That one lands because almost everyone in the room has probably done the same thing. They've tried to do something consistently for a long period of time and have, not been able to make it work. And last, direct address. If you're a B2B founder burning time on cold email, read this, right? So we're addressing them directly. If you're a B2B founder and you're experiencing this pain point, this is for you. We're literally saying verbatim, this is what you need. So if you were able to write out a belief from the last exercise, think about which of these 6 you'd write first. And we'll call that your homework. All right, let's talk about hooks. So each of those that we just went through before are framings, right? How you're going to set up this piece of content. But we need to talk about hooks and the anatomy of a hook, because every high-performing hook has 3 components, and most people write none of them. And so we'll go through each. The important thing about a hook is to know is it's 70% about the post. It's 70% of the post, which is nice because you can test different hooks on the same post body. First important key component of a strong hook is the pattern interrupt. So the first 2 to 4 words need to disrupt the scroll, not introduce the topic you're talking about, not summarize what you're going to say, but actually disrupt the individual who is scrolling past. Make someone pause and choose to keep reading. Now, if you just said LinkedIn is important for founders, that's something probably most people could just agree with. They read that and they go, yeah, okay, right? That's a topic. That's not a point of view. It's not offering a perspective. It's not creating any curiosity. Now, if I reframe that as I just deleted my LinkedIn app, that pattern interrupt is something that happened, and you probably want to know why. That specific tension, once you've stopped the scroll, allows you to name the exact problem, not a category of a problem, the very specific one. If you have vague tension or manufactured tension, That's what gets scrolled past. So again, if I just wrote this as I've been posting for years and not seeing results, way too vague. That could be anyone. Now, if I say I posted 3 times a week for 6 months, we have that hyper specificity and got 0 inbound calls, a pain that I experienced personally. Someone reading that has either had the same problem or knows someone who does. And third, the implicit promise. So don't explain what you're about to say. Make them need the next line. The promise should be implied, not stated. So here's what I learned about LinkedIn content. That just tells you what is coming. There's no tension, nothing to resolve. Then I changed one thing, pipeline in 30 days. Now you have to know what the thing is. The promise is implied. The resolution is close enough to read one more sentence. So you've hooked that person to be able to figure out, to want them to figure out what comes next. So the simple test that I run through before running through this, or before posting anything, is before you publish anything, does it have a pattern interrupt in the first 2 or 4 words? Does it name the specific tension? Not a category, but an actual problem? Does it create an implicit promise that makes them need line 2? And does it have 0 vague statements that could apply to anyone? If a 22-year-old lifestyle blogger could say, cut it, your buyer needs to feel like that was written for them. And then there's always the elevator test. And if you were standing in an elevator with someone and you wouldn't open that with, something that would capture their intention, then don't say it. And this goes for DMing as well. I think a lot of people get a little too robotic and formulaic. And so we want to be able to still be human and still show up as an individual on this platform. Looks like we have a question from Bram. I heard the LinkedIn algorithm changed last year. And this year with 360 Brew, I assume these hook formulas are tested and validated to still work well with the new algo. I understand that some past strategies and formats are now deprioritized by the newer algorithm because it optimizes for different things. This is a great question. So the question is really about LinkedIn's algorithm update. They call it 360 Brew. And there has been a massive shift, and it's continuing to evolve on what LinkedIn prioritizes. Before, it was okay to just state facts and things that were, factual. Now it is so much more important to have that opinion, and LinkedIn is completely prioritizing personal experience and lived experience over anything else. And so these hooks are still optimized for 360 Brew. And the key component is, I did this thing, let me tell you about it. I had this conversation, let me tell you about it. I sent 400 cold DMs, let me tell you about it, right? It's all from the perspective of your own lived experience. And then you're just sharing that story or sharing what you learned from it. And so these types of hooks and these types of posts will outperform what, used to be okay, where you could just be like, these are my favorite 5, tools for LinkedIn growth, or, pure listicles that have no perspective or opinion. Great question, Bram. All right, let's talk about intent signals. So what are signals? The main thing that most people misunderstand about LinkedIn is that 95% of your audience is actually not in a buying decision when they see your post. And taking a step back, every time you post, only about 5% of your followers will see your content. Then of that 5%, only 3 to 5% of them are actually in a buying decision. And so when you think about LinkedIn and your approach there, it really becomes a consistency game, because they're seeing your content, they're learning, they're following you. They might buy in 6 months, they might buy in 18 months. And your job during that time is to stay present and trusted. And the 5% of your audience that isn't active in evaluation right now, the problem is you can't tell who they are unless you know what to look for. And that's why we have intent signals. It's behavioral data, not a single action, but rather a pattern of actions that say, I'm paying attention in a way that goes beyond passive scrolling. The rule is simple. 2 or more signals from the same person in the same week, you have to reach out to them. Same day if you can, because that window really closes fast. You're top of mind for them. And when you do reach out, you're not cold. Remember, they've seen and they've engaged with previous content in a pattern, and you're just following up on something that they already did. And this is what changes everything about how the conversation starts. And so these are the main 6 signals worth tracking on LinkedIn specifically. Repeat profile views. If they are viewing your profile multiple times, they are probably evaluating you and the service that you provide. Note, you should have an optimized profile. If they're commenting with specific questions, not just a great post or a random question, but something that shows they actually read it and wanted to understand more about what you're doing and what you're talking about. That is pure unsatisfied curiosity, and that should be viewed as a buying signal. Viewing a profile after viewing a competitor, so they're doing side-by-side comparison, or sorry, I missed shares. Shares, if they are sharing your content with other people in your network, shares and saves are probably the highest value indicator that you can see on a post between likes, comments, shares, and saves. If they're viewing your profile and competitors, then they are definitely doing side-by-side comparison. You and someone else, this is a great opportunity to reach out to them, be proactive. And then saves. So they plan to revisit the post, solved a problem for them that they have now, and they want to go and revisit. This is why infographics are performing so well right now. And engages with yours and a competitor's content in the same week. So they're actively evaluating options. You're in the consideration set, and that's when a direct, relevant outreach actually lands with them. And that pattern matters more than any individual signal. 2 or more in a week, that's your trigger. So this is an example of what a signal tracker could look like, and how you want to organize it on your spreadsheet. Again, this is in that free resource pack that we included already prior. Simple spreadsheet, 6 columns, their name, company, what signal you saw when, what action you took, and a heat score. So what my recommendation is, every Monday morning, take 15 minutes and go through your LinkedIn notifications. Check who's viewed your profile. Look who has commented, who has shared, and who has saved, and enter in the relevant ones. Anyone with 2 or more signals in the same week gets flagged, and make sure you reach out that same day. And if this is a Monday ritual that turns passive content into active pipeline without missing a step. Posting is just broadcasting, and once you add this, you actually get full prospecting. Now, how do you actually reach out without feeling weird about it? The key difference is your DM follows is an action they already took. So if they follow you, if they engage with content, you're not just showing up randomly. You are actually continuing a conversation that they started. And that's the perfect frame you need to take going into this. So if they commented with a question, DM them and be like, hey, great question about my post on whatever topic. Happy to share more details if you're interested, and how we've approached with clients. The big thing to know is anything with DMs is you're essentially asking permission or following up with more information. And so you're just saying, hey, can I give you more information on this? If they shared your post, DM them within 48 hours and say, hey, thanks for sharing my post. Really appreciate it. Curious about what made it land for you. Because they've publicly endorsed you, and that's an invitation to talk more and a great reason for you to say thank you. If they viewed your profile more than once, you'd be like, hey, see, you've been checking out my profile. Is there something that caught your eye? Usually means that they're evaluating something, so you can ask them directly. Just be like, hey, I'm here to help. Direct, not pushy. Essentially, you're just opening the door with all of these. This is where that elevator test comes back into play as well. Again, all of these things I would say in person. Some things I would never say in person are like, hey, I noticed that you got a promotion, and, it's like, no, it's just like, hey, congrats on the promotion. That's awesome. The reason that most people don't follow you after content engagement is that they don't know what to say. And now you do. So in 3 to 5 minutes, just spend that amount of time per outreach, and that's really your whole workflow. Let's talk about the LinkedIn engine. So this is what we shared previously. All 6 of those modules, everything we put in, the full belief discovery prompts and templates, the content matrix with 6 hook types, the hook formula checklist, the signal tracker spreadsheet, and the DM scripts for every signal types. And if you use this and if you follow the instructions that we put together here, you'll be able to, definitely figure out what to post, really start gathering that information, and then start sending some DMs. And I guarantee you will have a customer or a client within your first 30 days of doing this consistently. Now, given the time today, we really only had time to scratch the surface. And so what we're doing is we have a full 2-hour workshop on Maven. You can scan this QR code here to join it. Charles dropped in a $50 off coupon on here to 25% off because the whole thing I think is just like $199. But the whole idea is we will go through this whole system together in that 2-hour workshop and make sure that by the end of it, you have a full content calendar for 30 days. We will talk about how to optimize your profile, make sure that we'll go in depth on what your beliefs are, how you have something notable to say, talking about different hooks. There's even more hook levers that we can pull on to write effective hooks. And then talking about DMs, and if you have some time to post and gather some engagement beforehand, we can go through your engagements and your DMs together and talk about what is effective to share. So yeah, would love to see you guys. It's next week. We have a few different cohort sessions coming up, so please book here, and hopefully I will see you guys in the session next week. Before we close out, it looks like we have some additional questions from Anoop. And how are you tracking these signals programmatically? Is there a tool or an action? Look, the reality is LinkedIn really hates third-party tools using on their platform. And so my major recommendation is just use the tools that are built in, especially if you're doing this as a solopreneur or an early stage founder. Just go into the LinkedIn analytics. If you have a Sales Navigator, you're able to see who viewed your profile and be able to capture a lot of these intent signals manually. If you're a little bit more tech forward and have gone into like some go-to-market automation tools, you can track all of these signals through things like Phantom Buster. We have a tool that we use called Valley. It's joinvalley.co, which helps you surface those intent signals and then do outbound to them. There's also another tool called Goji But again, all of these things are ways to just, mimic the same thing that you would do manually. And so I definitely recommend doing it manually first. before you get into the world of automation, because if you're not really sure what you're doing, um, it can get into a lot of it can get messy quick. Sorry. I hope that the audio hasn't been a problem leading up to this. But so I will say again, please, would love to see you guys at next week's Maven session. Again, it's a 2-hour workshop. I've made it as cheap as I physically possible on Maven. I really would love to do it free, but I want to make sure that I set you guys up to succeed on LinkedIn and be able to get customers or clients. And yeah, thank you guys for joining today. As always, it's great to see you. I do weekly free workshops here on Maven. You can find me on, here's the landing page for the customers. But you can find me on Maven here / Will Leatherman. You can see the courses that I've done previously. You can see the upcoming Lightning lessons. Again, we have a lot of great ones coming up. And as always, I hope to see you guys in next week's session. And please connect and follow with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions directly. Hope everyone has a nice week. Bye, everyone.